Welcome to the Floor Academy podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Hadeen, owner of Illustrious Hardwoods in always sunny Mesa, Arizona. Joining me this week is Mark Evans, and we are going to get into a discussion about follow-up questions. Mark and I got introduced to each other through a mutual contact, Daniel, and we started having this conversation. He sent me a sales kit that it's not a sales kit. It's more of a, Mark, what's it called? It's like a report. It's data.
It's like a white paper or a PDF or a book.
Well, yes, but I can't. It's practical data on things that,
knowledge, yeah,
on what's happening and how you're applying it. And so I'm running through this thing. I'm looking at it's like 70 pages. It was big. It was a lot of pages. I was very impressed with it. And so I got caught up in this thing of follow-up questions. And I was like, that's something not enough of us do. And so you're probably like me, and you learned a skill and you got into this world and you were installing, and then you said, my boss is an a-hole and he's an idiot and I know everything better than him and I can do this on my own and I don't need anybody. And you went and started selling your own jobs, and you quickly realized you don't know how to sell. I mean, maybe you do, but probably not. And you were like, oh, well, how much should I charge? And how do I schedule these things? And what kind of questions should I ask? And how do I figure out if this is a good client for me or a bad client for me? Are they an a-hole and I just can't tell and I have to all of these things. And yet most of us have never picked up a book or even studied basic human psychology to make this all easier for us. And so this discussion with Mark is we're going to get into discussing follow-up questions and just this kind of how to build rapport with clients in general so that you can land more clients and have a better close rate. You can better assess if someone's going to be a good fit for you, and really just help with your sales process so that it's more efficient and informative for the client so that you're actually solving their problem instead of throwing a product at them, which sadly is what most of us do. We don't care what Mrs. Jones says to us. We say, here's this thing I'm really good at doing. Just take this. Well, if you would tell Mrs. Jones how you could solve her actual problem, which is she thinks her house is ugly sometimes, and you tell her how beautiful you're going to make it with your product and that she's going to be able to show it off to her friends and be the, everyone's going to be jealous of her in the neighborhood. Now you're hitting the things that she actually cares about instead of telling her the things that you care about, like a wear layer or your awesome water-based finish or your epoxy grout or whatever it is that you're trying to sell that she does not give a shit about. Before I have Mark introduce himself, thank you for joining us again. Floor Academy is here every week to help you look at the back end of your business so that you can get yourself a lifestyle lift by elevating your business to the next level. We are going to have discussions on all of the things that, whether it's how to use the money, how to make the money, how to bid more effectively, how to look at the psychology of yourself so that you can be more positive around you. We're looking at all that stuff so that you can better the back end of your business to run it more successfully. And you just need to take away a couple of golden nuggets every week. I highly encourage you to learn while you earn. That is the best way to do this. Put in the earbuds while you're working on a floor or a shower and get it done. You can help support the show by visiting patreon.com/Floor Academy. Even $5 a month goes a long way in helping me to continue make the content. If you're finding value in this, I sincerely appreciate your support. You can also visit the website, flooracademypod.com. Go check out the shop. Get a really cool hoodie. Profit is not a dirty word, right? And so you can go sporting that around. Don't sport it around in front of your clients, but come to the trade shows with it. It's a great place. We've got leave a review, subscribe, all that fun stuff. It helps push me up in the rankings so that more people can find this helpful knowledge. And we've got a quick word from our sponsor, Chronosoft, before we get going. Let me find that. I am super organized today. If you're looking for an easy and affordable way to manage your business, Kronos Flooring Software is your solution. Streamline your workflow for managing leads, inventory, and scheduling installations. It includes every feature needed to support your business at a very affordable price. It's extremely user-friendly and easy to navigate. Full integration with QuickBooks makes tracking your profitability as easy as clicking a button. Chronosoft is built by a flooring retailer for flooring retailers or installers. It is not built by a company that does not understand our actual physical needs in this business. It is built by people that live it daily, so it fits our workflows incredibly well. You can schedule a demo at chronosoft.com. That's KRONUSSOFT.com, or go to the show notes, click on the link, let them know I sent you over, and I guarantee you, you will like what you see. Welcome, Mark. Who are you? What do you do? Why do you do it?
Kyle, I'm fired up to be here, man. Thanks so much.
Good.
And I appreciate what you do and what you do for your listeners. I love the idea of iron sharpening iron, right? Like, what is that, Proverbs? Where, right, like the whole mindset of just getting better. And I love what you're doing with the podcast and how you're helping people meet them where they are at. That's really great.
Thank you. So, you are self-employed, right? So give me the brief background. What's the story?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, grew up in an entrepreneurial family. Both my parents and then my wife's parents are all entrepreneurs. So I got put to work at a very young age, and was always hustling, looking for opportunities to either sell product or do something, make some money so I could buy basketball shoes, beer as I got older, things like that. But I spent a good solid, couple, probably over a decade plus working for some really fast growing corporations, right? So I started my career in very fast corporate settings, and I very quickly found something that I love. And what that was ultimately building sales teams. And so in a couple of cases, I helped build sales teams that went from, anywhere from 3 to 4 people to start all the way over to 100 in the span of about 14 months or so. In another occasion, we helped grow another team very similar and very rapidly. And I just loved this idea of taking something that maybe had a little bit of smoke going on, a little bit of a flame, and really being able to grow it. And so being able to kind of take business building skills along with building a sales team was something that I knew I always wanted to do for myself, not just for other companies, but wanted to help other companies ultimately build their own sales teams. And so I started my entrepreneurial journey back in 2018. I had successfully built a couple of big sales teams, got the notice of some individuals in the area that I was living, and basically stacked up a couple of customers before I left my, very safe, very comfortable, very good 9-to-5 corporate career, and joined the ranks of entrepreneurs like family members and great grandfathers that have done before me.
Okay. And then you like a lot of us, you stumbled into this flooring industry.
Yeah,
and,
very good.
Now you're stuck, but you love it because it's the best people.
Yeah, it's really a great industry. So when I transferred into starting my own business and consulting with other companies, I wrote a book in 2019 on how to build sales teams, how to structure sales conversations. Some of the stuff I think we'll be talking about today, it's just evolved over the years. And I really focused on working in my first kind of couple of years in business with tech companies, SaaS companies, health tech companies. Several of them were backed by private equity, Inc. 5000. These were companies that were just growing at exponential rates. And so it was really enjoyable to work with them. And then about 2 years ago or so, kind of out of the blue, I had a business connection that referred me into this flooring company, and I just really, really enjoyed it. I kind of reluctantly, not even reluctantly, but kind of like not really knowing what I was getting into, but really liked the people, really liked what their passion was, their motivation, and their vision. So came in and helped them build out a couple of sales systems that's been very successful over the past couple of years. And since then, I've been fascinated by this industry, if nothing else. It's just incredible. I think a lot of it due to the people, like you mentioned before, but just a lot of opportunity. It's one of those industries that every single home in the United States or apartment or condo or I mean
Hmm.
any dwelling needs it, right? They need it. But it goes under the radar. It's kind of like one of these we call them sometimes a B cubed, right? Boring old business or a Bob, a boring
Yeah.
old business. And it's great. It's amazing. And if you're in this industry, there's a lot of opportunity, even in kind of uncertain times or what could potentially be an uncertain year in 2024.
I totally agree. So I want to start, right. You've built out large sales teams and you've stumbled into flooring. You've now transitioned your material to better fit this specific industry. And what caught my eye was follow up questions. And
Hmm.
I don't know that that's a lot of times what happens. I think, like I said, a lot of us will go out and we say, oh, you want floors? Okay, let me measure this all up, put it all together, and then I'm going to put together the numbers. And here you go. It's going to be $10,000. Do you want it or not? Well,
Hmm.
that's great, and some people do have some systems in place, but I think that's the key is you've built out these entire sales systems so that you can onboard people, get them up to speed quickly, and get them closing at the rates of other people that are already in the company because there's a repeatable process in place. And so I think that's what we need to talk about is how do we build this out because there's a lot of amazing small mom and pop operations across this country
Yeah,
and all they're lacking is the consistency in how to deliver it not through them but through somebody else. And
thousand
this
percent
is the
agree.
key
Yeah,
is you just have
thousand
to
percent.
package you got to package your stuff up. So let's start with follow-up questions, right? Even getting in the whether it's on the phone or we've gotten in the door when I'm talking about when you were talking about follow up questions in your write up, what kind of things are we looking to do? Right. Obviously, I got to ask name, phone number, email.
Yeah.
What are you looking to do? And she's going to start telling me, right? And so I start having this conversation, and she's like, "Oh, I love my house, but it's kind of ugly, and the floor's outdated, and like, right." I get a bunch of stuff,
Yeah.
but now what do I do?
Great question. So first, let's get you set on what I would call like the sales map. All right. So in every sales conversation, there's really like four main components, and this can really be from selling floors in a mom and pop retail situation to large like multifamily complexes or commercial settings, all the way up to. I mean, like at the end of the day, Kyle, like sales is all about kind of primarily hitting on these four key metrics, and
Okay.
this is something that I've adapted from like my book, but man, I took a lot of this stuff from things I've learned over the years, but also from like ancient sales books and things like that. So we've been doing this as humans, right, for a long time. And there's really like four main parts. So let me start there, Cal. So let me just
Okay.
reverse a little bit. So and zoom out. There's really four main parts to any good sales conversation. And this could also be like in making friendships or if you're single, talking to someone and trying to get their number or something like that. It really comes down to like four main things. And I'm married, and so I've been out of that game for a long time. So I don't even know if that's what's
Don't
even
yeah.
happening these days.
Let's not sell some hookup artist stuff here.
Yeah, we don't want that. But here's ultimately what it boils down to. There's four main parts. There's rapport. That's the first initial part of the conversation, right? That's where you're really building. That's that initial interaction. That's where you're building at least a base level of relationship. It's the getting to know you aspect of the conversation, right?
Hmm.
It's the, hey, how's your day going? Tell me a little bit about your property. When did you move to this neighborhood if you're in a retail setting? How long have you had your house for? It's right. It's just trying to understand and build a little bit of camaraderie there. Then moving into the second part is what we call discovery, right? And discovery is like this is the meat of a sales conversation. This is usually the difference between a very solid sales interaction and a very poor one. So, Kyle, if you've ever been in a sales experience where you feel like, wow, the person didn't even ask me any questions, they didn't
Hmm.
hear anything, they just like, I showed up and they threw up all over my shoes. Like that's oftentimes what salespeople are doing. And I think honestly, like that's where salespeople get such a bad rap sometimes. And that's where some people, if they have a reluctance to sales, or if they get that icky feeling, if they're like, well, I
Yeah.
don't want to be a salesperson, oftentimes it's because of this, right? It's because of how they're acting here. So
Yes.
discovery is all about selling through questions, right? It's gaining insights into their needs and wants. It's getting that prospect to articulate, clarify their needs and wants ultimately. And this is the point of the call or the conversation or interaction where you should be asking a question, like maybe 20% of the time, talking maybe 20% of the time, and listening about 80%. And you don't want to get those ratios mixed up during this time.
Hmm.
This is when you're just asking a question and you're just waiting for feedback. You're think of like a doctor, right? In this case, imagine you're sick, you go into a doctor's office, and what does a doctor do? Well, if they're a good doctor, they'll ask you like, all right, how long has this been hurting? How have you felt this way? What are your symptoms? Have you tried anything new? Right? They'll go through a list of questions. Only once they've asked you your questions, then do they register a diagnosis,
Hmm.
right? So that discovery part is all about just collecting data. So does that make sense so far? You tracking there?
Yep. I love it.
Awesome. So I mean, just some questions, right? Is what questions we've asked in a multifamily or in a commercial setting is like, hey, who are you currently working with as a flooring vendor? What's your experience been with them? What do you like about them? What are some of your top priorities when it comes to looking at flooring for your home or for your apartment? Are you looking at any specific type? Do you have any concerns or thoughts about what you actually want to put in there? Is there anything you've seen? Right? There's all these
Hmm.
questions that you can ask, and if you just ask them and be quiet, they're going to tell you exactly what they're looking for.
I think that's the biggest part right there. Shut up and listen, folks. Be
Yeah.
quiet, ask a question and listen, and then don't talk, right? And
Yeah.
I know that your experience is multifamily, right? And so in residential remodel, you can ask some of those same questions, right? Like how's it going, and what are you looking for, and tell me a little bit about your lifestyle, right? Do they
Yeah.
have three big dogs? Do they have four
Your
kids?
pets.
Is
Yeah.
what is going on in the house can quickly determine what they might have four dogs and three kids under the age of 5, and then they tell you they
They're all on a
want like
roller
a
hockey team. Yeah.
correct, and the kids are riding skateboards in the house, and then they're like, I want a luxury vinyl plank floor, and you're like, whoa, tile might be better for you. Like it's might cost you a little bit more, but it's going to hold up long term to like this active crazy lifestyle that's going on in there. And so I think
Hmm.
that's really the key, is that instead of going in when you're talking about that discovery part, I had a contractor come over. I didn't want to rip out any of the subfloor in my house, and I had somebody come over to bid it. The guy would not shut up about how great he was, past
Hmm.
projects he'd done, and how easy doing my project would be. But he didn't ask me anything about what I wanted done, how I wanted it done, when I wanted it done. Right? He just kind of came in, looked at the room, and he's like, "Yeah, I could do this," and then kind of like gave me a price. But then he wouldn't shut up about everything else, and I was just like, "I'm not hiring this guy because I have absolutely no faith in him because he would not shut up talking about himself."
Yeah.
And
Just like a doctor, right? Could you imagine if a doctor came in and was like, "Oh, Kyle, you look sick. All right, we're going to amputate and then we're going to do this, but I'm really, really good. So don't worry, you're going to be totally fine."
yes.
Right? Like you would run the other way. And that's the equivalent of what that individual did for you, was
Hmm.
try to type you into, well, this is exactly what he wants, not realizing that, well, like, no, probably not.
Yeah, it was a horrible, like on being on the client side of it, it was a horrible sales experience. And I was just like, how do you stay busy? Like, does this work for you? Because it does not, like, that did not work for me. Like, I have no interest in hiring you. But I think that's really big, right? You have to get to those questions. And there's things you can do by looking around the home or wherever you're at. Again, most I focused on residential remodel, and so it was like, oh, there's pictures of kids. Let's ask about them. Or what's in the house that you can ask about? Are they into cars? Are they into boats? Are they into is there some kind of tchotchkes laying around that the missus has all over the place? I like the questions that you had for the multifamily people of who are you currently working with? What's working for you? What's not working for you? I love those questions even in the remodel world of, have you worked with any other contractors in the past, and what was bad about that experience? Tell me
Yeah.
what was bad so that I can go nail those parts, because that's what they're going to be focused on is last time this sucked. So
Mhm.
let me knock that out of the park, And then I know I can do everything else well. So then they'll clearly be happy and impressed with the services provided. What other?
And furthermore,
Go ahead.
if they're thrilled with who they did the Ramada last time and they can't use them for whatever reason, then just ask them, oh yeah, well tell me more about what you really liked about them. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're going to give you the list of exactly how to ultimately sell them. Right. Like people hate to buy, but they love, or they hate to be sold, but they love to buy. Like people want to buy, but they don't want to feel like they're being sold. So that's where
Mm-hmm.
this questioning comes into play, right? And is really, really critical. In just asking, right? And to your point of the experience that you had, and I've had very similar experiences. Um, if an individual would have just taken, and asked you 3 to 5 questions, they don't have to, ask 92 questions. But if they just took the time to ask 3 to 5 questions, I bet that could have totally changed the dynamic in that sales conversation and probably ultimately maybe push that individual to actually working with you. Maybe not because they,
Mm-hmm.
they did some other things, but it's going to put them on such a better route.
Well, and it gives you more to converse with them about. Right now, we actually know.
Yeah.
It's I think oftentimes we don't realize that at the core of it, businesses solve problems. So you just have to go figure out what the problem is. It's not that they need a new floor, whether it's multifamily or commercial or residential remote. There's a reason they want a new floor. Is it ugly? Is it worn down? Did the dog piss on it? Right? Like, what
Hmm.
is the actual problem here? And then go solve it. And you're not going to learn the problem without asking questions and trying to get to understand somebody. And then you can move forward. And so that's that, those building rapport and getting to know somebody, and then that discovery phase of really digging into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Be curious, right?
mhm,
Just be curious. Like just generate or just demonstrate a general level of curiosity. And I guarantee it's going to be helpful for you.
mhm, totally agree. All right. What do we got? What's step 3?
All right, so we built some rapport, then we just spent a good amount of time on discovery. And again, that's really where you want to spend the majority time of your sales calls. I've been in sales calls where let's say it's an hour-long phone call and 90% will be in discovery. And just based off of the questions you're asking, and you've probably experienced this as well, when someone knows the right questions to ask, you automatically think that they have an answer. Like you mentioned before with the software that is sponsoring this today, you said they're from the industry, they understand the issues that we're going through.
Mhm.
Well, in a sales situation, if you know the right questions to ask, and if you demonstrate a high level of, let's call it understanding and knowledge about the industry, about their certain situation, people are automatically going to assume that you have the answer and that you're the expert versus you, like your vendor did, right? Tout like how great they are, how many projects they've done, right? That doesn't jive, right? So we take the
Mhm.
discovery call. So we take the discovery questions. We're understanding all of the different gaps, right? And ultimately, in discovery, what we're ultimately trying to do is to get them to recognize where their current status is, like where are they, right, on the map, and then ultimately, like where is their goal. And really, really good salespeople can create that gap. And the best salespeople create the biggest amount of gap. Like you're here, you want to get here. Well, I'm going to show you in this solutions part how I can take you from here all the way up to your desired solution. And that's really all it is discovery is really helping understand where they're at, helping build that gap to where ultimately you can be that bridge to that solution. And solution is honestly, it's just taking it and it's applying what you just learned, right, in the discovery session, and then just applying the answers to it, right? It's how your service, how your product, how
Mhm.
whatever you do can ultimately help them. Some people call this part like the pitch. I don't think it even has to be anything like that. I think something as simple as like, hey, Kyle, you called me out here today because you want your flooring replaced. You told me X, Y, and Z. Here's how we would address this, this, and this. Um, and right, like, and all we're doing is we're just matching what you told me with the solutions that I can potentially
Mhm.
provide. And that's it. It's as simple as that.
So it's not a long, drawn out pitch. It's you take all the information they gave you and you get a clear path to here's your problem, here's your solution. This is how we solve all of that through our services to make you feel like you're special and important and cared for and that it's done right. and it gets all packaged up neatly in 5-10 minutes max, probably.
Hopefully, right? Like
Okay.
hopefully, best case scenario, it would, right? Instead of like leading off with the pitch, well, here's what we can do and here's what we're going to do that, right? It's really just like kind of the timing. You can still now sprinkle in, here's the mechanism that we'll use, right? Or like here's what makes us different. And the best companies, from what I've seen, whether it's in service, whether it's in SaaS or tech, right? They take what they normally do and maybe what the rest of the industry does, but they just put their own wrapper on it, right? They just put their own like, well, this is our, flooring renovation 1, 2, 3 system, and it's
Mm-hmm.
easy as 1, 2, 3, and we do this, then we do this, then we do that. Well, every single flooring company would have to do those exact same elements. But when a company puts that wrapper on it and explains that properly after doing that discovery session, doing that in the solutions call, well, then someone's automatically thinking, well, yeah, of course I want that 1, 2, 3 process. That sounds great. That sounds like I won't be out of my house for very long. Sounds like that's going to be the
Mm-hmm.
least intrusive, the safest, the best, et cetera, et cetera.
Gimmicky names go a long way. Like, you may think they're really dumb folks, and having the illustrious hardwoods, um, like, I don't even know, like artisan guarantee, or call it whatever you want. Come up with some stupid gimmicky name for your company, and put your warranty on it, or whatever your super duper pitch is that encompasses the value you add, and put all the things that you do that everybody else does but doesn't advertise. There, at one point I was using the, why can't I think of it? It's this dust sprinkle stuff. Whatever. You put the powder down and it creates less dust. I don't know why I can't think of it.
Okay.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But right, like, other companies weren't doing it, but I was like, I create less dust. Like, here you go. And people are like, oh wow, like my house will be clean, right? And they were all amazed
Yeah.
and willing to pay more for it. And so it a lot of people don't ask about warranties when it comes to flooring. And most states make you do a 1 year. My state does a 2 year. I don't care if you put a 5 year, 10 year, lifetime, whatever kind of warranty you want on there. I would put it in your pitch because no one else is talking about it. And so if you do, now you're going to stand out and you're going to have something else that nobody else is doing, right? They feel more protected with you because you actually talked about it. So what are all the gimmicky things that people do that you can do, especially like for you dustless sanding guys? It's pretty common now. I know there's still guys that don't do it, but it is fairly common. If you're not finding a way to hype up the dustless and make it the thing, you're missing out, because you just come up with, whatever your silly dust-free guarantee is, and then, add $300, or depending on the size of the house, to the quote, and then hire a cleaning service at the end and tell everybody that they now get a free complimentary cleaning with every flooring installation, because
Yeah.
no matter how clean you are, every construction project has dust, and I want to leave your home better than I found it.
Yeah. Call it
Who's
the
not going to
white
love
glove
that?
inspection guarantee. We
Mm-hmm.
include it into it. Yeah. Because think about it. If you're going up against, and let's say someone is, contacting 3 different vendors, or they're trying to get 3 different services. Well, like, if you're not going to stand out from what they are doing, you're just going to blend into that mass. And it's all this like kind of confusing element of like, I think they're going to do this and then they do this. And a confused buyer doesn't buy. A confused buyer like does not move forward. I know that that's true for me. I know
Mm-hmm.
that that's true for audiences at large. And so anytime you can talk about whether it's that wrapper that we're talking about, or another concept that I want to share with your listeners as well, comes from a famous marketing individual back in like the I want to say 30s or 40s. And I think I'll get my beers right. I hope I will. But I want to say it was like Blatt's beer was like the lowest performer. They were getting beat out by Anheuser-Busch and all
Mm-hmm.
these other beer brands back in the day, right? And this marketing consultant is walking around the brewery because this company's got to make a change. They were like months away from going out of business. And ultimately, they didn't know what to do, right? So they call in this marketing consultant. He's getting a tour of the brewery. And I think this was in beautiful Milwaukee, Wisconsin as well. He's
Okay.
getting a tour of the brewery. He's walking around, and he goes to one of the giant like columns, one of the giant stills. It's been a while since I've gone on a brewery tour. And the brewmaster is explaining, well, here's what we do in this process. We heat it up to 450 degrees, so it gets super hot. So it's the cleanest, purest possible malt, water, whatever that is exactly. And the marketer's thinking, oh, that's really interesting, right? And kind of a light bulb clicks off. And then he asked the brewmaster, and I think the brewmaster kind of saw him like, get intrigued in this. And the brewmaster said,
Hmm.
well, don't worry. Everybody, every brewery has to do this. Every brewery does this. And then the marketer very wisely says, well, is anybody talking about it?
Yeah.
And so fast forward, right? The whole marketing campaign was built around this aspect of like the cleanest, purest beer because we heat it to such certain degree. And they go from being like the seventh ranked brewery to being number one in a very short order. So I challenge your listeners, Scott, like, what is it that you're doing that maybe your competitors are doing? Maybe everybody has to do it, but if you're not talking about it and your
Yep.
competitors aren't talking about it, it can be unique and special to you. And that's a key element of trying to stand out from a commodity and a commoditized service to actually being the value provider who can ultimately charge higher margins, rates, et cetera, and provide more value to their clientele.
Well, that's exactly it, right? When the client is confused, it does become about price, and then it becomes about, well, this company's the cheapest or the middle one, and so I want to go with them. And your bid that's more expensive doesn't make sense, or even if you are equally priced, if you would have offered them value by explaining your doohickeys and gimmicks and all of the stuff that you built into your sales presentation, it's going to help you command a higher rate in your market. And it's not, you could do many things better. You could do things worse. But as long as the sales presentation is there, you can make more. I mean, you should do things better because you're charging more and you have more things to cover with overhead and whatnot. But it's it's amazing how a presentation can help you stand out. I'm nothing special in my market, but I close deals at higher rates than competitors just based on how I tell the story to the clients based off of the story they give me. And then they say, "Oh, that
Yeah.
sounds amazing. You're so much different than everybody else." I'm really not. I mean, I do things by the books, which many people don't, but that doesn't really, everybody should be doing it the way I'm doing it. I'm not doing anything special. So, before we move into number 4, right? That's where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I gotta interrupt us. We get a quick word from John's Manville. Compatible with all GoBoard products is the new GoBoard membrane. If you're asking why a membrane when GoBoard itself is waterproof through and through, the answer is simple. A membrane extends your GoBoard installations for mud pans, steam rooms, and shared walls requiring a fire-rated board under the waterproofing. Now, who's going to be the most badass GoBoard installer out there? You are. Visit www.jm.com/GoBoard for all the product details, and don't miss out on their other products, right? They got boards, they got drains, they got the wedges, they got the shower pan. You're starting to be able to almost build a complete system over there at GoBoard. It's getting pretty fancy. And they got that lenient warranty, and you can use many other sealants with their products. So give them a visit. Click the link in the show notes. Mark, we've got building rapport, we've got discovery, we've got then that we're going to build a gap to the solution so that we are the
Yep.
only ones that can fill it. What's last?
All right. So last but not least is closing, right? And ultimately, how I look at closing is essentially trying to create a level of a win-win, right? And closing necessarily doesn't have to mean a purchase order or a credit card, but it's a commitment to a future action. So I think oftentimes companies, people, et cetera, can get this confused with, oh, I've got to close them every single time, right? Like first call close. Well, some situations can call for that if appropriate. Others aren't, right? And others just won't be the time frame for it. So I highly, highly recommend think through what's the natural and next best step of your sales process, right? So ultimately, what needs to happen next in order for that conversation to move forward and make that very next commitment. I'm a big believer that when you go through this process of here's building rapport, going through the discovery, going through the solutions, ultimately, if your business model can accommodate it, ultimately saying, hey, what I'm going to do today, Kyle, is I want to put together a specialized quote just for you and your property
Hmm.
that will show X, Y, and Z. Here's what it's going to accomplish. And I'd like to deliver that back to you in person, on XYZ date. Does that date or the another date work for you? Right. And while that may not be your traditional close of like getting the check, right, or getting the purchase order, ultimately what that's doing is setting you up for that closing call is what I would look at. And this is a very, very common practice that you'll see in software sales, in other solution selling type of environments. And I think can work very, very well in other industries as well.
It's funny you bring that up. So there's a marketer within the flooring space. He works with all contractors that just put up a post, and he was like, if you're not delivering your quotes in person, then you're not closing as much as you could. And so you just
Mhm.
brought it up too. And it's
Yeah.
something that's not done a lot. I think most of us in this industry we've embraced technology enough to use it, but we're not using it well. And so we get all the numbers, and if we're not closing on the spot the very first time we're out there, we're going home, we're typing up all the information, figuring it out, emailing it off, and then we say, "Did you get it?" And you don't get a
Is the
response.
money
And then
ready yet?
and then
Do you
you
have my
call
money?
it, well, it's
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like, "Hey, did you get the quote?" Or, "Hey, what do you think?" And then you're following up, and you keep getting ghosted, and then you wonder why you're not closing. And so this scheduling to go sit back down with them intrigues me, right? Because I get it in a corporate 9 to 5 business world where bids can be hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, and not that, 5, 10, 20, $50,000 for a floor isn't a lot of money, but for some reason, we think we're different or special. I don't know what it is, but we don't do it that way. So what do you see as the actual advantage of getting back in the door, sitting down and going through the quote?
All right. So let's just take a look at this because you said something that's really interesting to me. You said, right, like, hey, in an enterprise environment, if I'm selling $100,000 piece of software, right, like this is what they would do. But I mean, what is honestly more intrusive? Is it a software that you have to purchase for your work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or your home's floors being replaced, where everything's going to have to be moved, ripped up. There's going to be dust, to your point before. Like, I think we sometimes look at, and this is easy to do when you're actually in it, right? Like, when you're on the inside of a jar, like everything looks like a jar, right? When you're
Yes.
in it, right? Like you can be like, well, it's just flooring. Man, like that is one of the biggest investments that a homeowner can make in their property. And it's a big one. It impacts them on so many more levels. So, like, number one, like, don't underestimate the amount of time, thought, effort, and importance that your prospect and customers are putting on this project. For
Mm-hmm.
you, it's just another like Monday or Tuesday job, and you call it like this is job 32, and I've got to go here and I've got to do that, and it's an inconvenience because we got to do all this. But to your prospect or customer, this is like one of the most important things that they're doing. They could have been saving up for this. They could have been foregoing vacations, working
Mm-hmm.
extra hours. And if you're not going to treat it with that level of respect and just think like, well, it's my project, like then you got to shift that around. Because if you don't come at it from that angle of, hey, this is a important investment that my customer, my prospect is willing to make, like then just like you may want to think about like getting out of the industry, to be honest with you. Like this just may not be a fit for you if you don't want to help people in that type of regard.
Yeah, I think that's great
Um,
advice. We
yeah.
have to business in general. You need to put people first, but especially in a service based industry, if you're not putting people first and taking care of their needs, then I don't see you being successful very long term.
Yeah. But back to your original question. So, what are some of the benefits? So, number one, a common acronym used for this is book a meeting from a meeting. It's called BAMFAM. And if you ever have worked for a software company, you will be BAMFAMmed, to death here. And that's ultimately like never leaving an appointment, a call without the next commitment to action, without the next meeting on schedule. Number one, I like it when someone goes back, sharpens their pencil, and delivers me an actual professional quote.
Hmm.
I've gotten quotes before where like it's written on a pencil and paper, or it's like it's emailed to me at the spot. And it's just like, well, did you get everything right? Then it like starts adding more and more questions. It's kind of, to me, it's kind of like the waiter who wants to impress everybody and memorize everybody's order. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
dude, like there's 12 of us here. Someone is highly allergic to shellfish. Like now is not the time. So number one, I think it demonstrates a level of professionalism. Number two, right, when you're booking that meeting, because and I can tell you this from someone who's going through some home remodeling projects right now. When I get a quote, I'm not reading through it. I'm going to the bottom line. And like, is it within my expectation or is it without my expectation?
Hmm.
And so the buyer or your prospect is going to be coming up with all sorts of rationalizations. This is way too expensive. This is ridiculous pricing, right? Like, where is this coming from?
Yeah.
Because they had an expectation. And I can almost guarantee 9 times out of 10, it's not going to match what the reality of the situation is. Because like as a homeowner, I'm not a pro at this. Like I don't know what flooring should cost. Like I have zero idea. And so that's when you, as a real advisor, as a real expert in the industry, can take that quote, sit down, because whether or not they're expressing it and saying it loud, or if you're just emailing a quote, emailing you back with the questions, they're thinking of these questions. They're building up this level of resistance. So that time to come back and to actually go through that quote with them, don't send it to them beforehand, but like bring it to you and
Hmm.
say like, hey, we're going to go through this quote together, and I'm going to explain each part of this so you have a full understanding so you can make the best possible decision. That's going to tee you up for success, right? That's going to tee you up to go from commoditized product to ultimately like, wow, this person really is an advisor to me or is really a expert in this.
No, I like it, especially because you're going to be able to sit down and explain everything. I think a lot of times we go out and we have these initial consultations and explain everything. And if you're super detail oriented and you're the guy or gal that's doing everything right and you're doing it by the book and you're talking about certifications and ANSI standards and NWFA guidelines or using the manufacturer specs, whatever it is you're doing, that all goes over their head very, very quickly because you're the third guy, the fifth guy in the house to go give them a quote, and they've all said so many things that they can't keep it straight. That again, they're like you said, you're not looking through the quote and reading through it and actually understanding everything that's provided all the time. You're looking
Mhm.
at that bottom number and saying, can I afford it? Can I not afford it? This is way out of the realm of expectations, whatever it is. And so to be able to sit down and go over all of those little details again of what separates you from the other companies is, I think, really great advice. And I know our time is super valuable and it's hard to get out to quotes and say that it's hard enough to go out and do the initial one and get all the measurements. So to go back and have to present something is going to be difficult for owner operators. I 100% understand. I think that this is something that could be very, very valuable to you. And all the more reason that we should be charging for quotes. And that if they go with you, it gets added to the project. And if it doesn't, then you compensate yourself for the time. But this is part of a professional presentation that has to get made up and delivered. And you're having to go out there twice. And so even that is something that's going to separate you from the competition. Well, why do you charge? Well, because I'm going to have to come out twice in order to bring
Mhm.
this back out and go over it with you. Well, nobody else is doing that. Why can't you just send me the number? I want to make sure you understand it and you can clearly see all of the value we're providing you to solve the solutions or solve the problems that you presented to us. And then you could list them off to them of, you
Mhm.
told me that you have this, that, the other thing. I want to make sure that all of this gets relayed to you and we're able to go through it as best as possible so that you understand why the quote is the way it is instead of just looking at the number and saying, well, you're twice as much as everybody else. Well, I'm doing twice as many things as everybody else.
And if I don't know that, right, and if you're not there to walk that through to me
Mm-hmm.
and see how that's actually going to add or that's going to save me in the long run, that's going to protect the value of my investment. If you're not there to show that to me or explain that to me, then like I am literally just shopping off a price. And also, too, why I like that second call and that follow-up is because you can be asking closing questions during that time, right? Something as simple as like, hey, so when we come here in 2 weeks, right? Again, of course, if
Hmm.
you're going to choose us, where should we park the truck? Like where, so that we know it's out of the way. All right, where can we access the house? Where can we do these things? And if they're going along, right, and they're answering these questions, like, well, you're reducing the amount of resistance that ultimately your prospect is going to
Mm.
have. So I think it's a really smart move. I would highly recommend it, and I would challenge those that are like, well, I can't afford to do it, right, for XYZ. Honestly, you can't afford not to do it, right? Like the sales part of your business is the most important because without customers, you don't have a business. You just potentially have a truck and some tools, right?
Hmm.
Customers make your business, and that's what separates you from a guy that does DIY at other people's houses to an actual business where people pay you for. And so if you're not going to instigate that or you're not going to apply this because you feel like you're too busy, then like you're kind of missing out on the bigger game here, and looking at elevating your business to I think what you're prescribing is like, hey, a business that you actually work on and not actually work in.
Yes, and I think there's a disconnect. I lost it. You know what, that happens. I don't got it. That's okay. We're gonna move
That's
on.
all right. That's all right.
But there's a disconnect that happens when you go and you're
Hey, and that
not
happens, Kyle,
following
in every
up,
business
and
too.
it's
That happens
just.
in every business. I see
Mhm.
that I mean, there's SaaS companies, there's software companies, there's health tech companies that are doing that exact same thing. So yeah, totally. It's not uncommon. It's not special just to your industry, but those that have actually built really awesome businesses that their families and generations benefit from. I'm not talking about the Amazons and Walmarts of the world. I'm talking just a really great, profitable operation that doesn't rely on you every single day to push it forward.
Yes.
That's a great business to have. And I think that's what everybody wants here.
I would hope so. I love doing what I do, but I don't want to have to do it forever. I would love to be able to train people, and that's actually my next question for you. And so, how much of this
Yeah.
is you got to package this up? Because I don't want to be
Yeah.
the sales guy, right? Again, if we're gonna have to go and follow up with people, this involves more time, and I'm busy working on the floor, or hopefully training people to work on the floor for me or in the field.
Hmm.
And well, no one can sell as good as me. Well, what if there was a package system? And so do you have a way for us to quickly and easily to package these 4 steps into a consistent way of do I design a form I fill out when I go and I just make sure everything's on it, or do I have like little note cart? Like, how do I package this up into a repeatable system I can teach to anybody so they can go be successful doing it and they don't need me to hold their hand?
Great question. So it starts first with some training, right? So I would highly recommend um, building out, and you're going to think like, well, no, this is only for corporations and big businesses. Like we have
Mm.
installed training systems in businesses small as like 1 and 2 man operations because they see how important it ultimately is. And you're never going to scale beyond that if you can't. So start thinking about, all right, how can we ultimately train it? To your question before, like, all right, what should we put down, or like how can we do this? Number one, I'll give the listeners of your podcast, will put together a special landing page just for listeners of this audience where they can download a guide that's going to have all of the questions that's broken down into rapport, discovery, solutions, and close as well. So that's going to take them through all of those resources.
Okay.
Um, so we'll make sure we have that so they have some examples and kind of a workflow when it comes to that. So that's kind of number one is understanding at least first the sales conversation. And then number two, something really simple that everybody can do. If you are the business owner and operator and you're also the lead salesperson, here's what I would challenge you to do as you have a new salesperson. There's a couple of tools that you can do. Number one, and I'll make sure that this is included in the PDF guide that we give to your audience
Okay.
as well. Number one, there's an exercise that I call it's called the triangle drill, right? And it's as simple. It can be done with 2 people. It works best with 3, but it's a way to practice the actual sales pitch, the sales conversation, the elements of that rapport, discovery, solutions, and close without ever having to leave your store. Very, very simple role practice exercise that they can be implementing. and they can be implementing right away, because ultimately you don't want to practice on people that can ultimately pay you money, right? Practice on coworkers,
Hmm.
spouses, friends, etc., whoever will take you up on that. And leave the real world application to people that can sign a check for you. So that's one. Another really good one that we have that I like is called the sink or swim test. And that's essentially a couple of questions. And we have this in a PDF form that I'll include in that doc as well.
Okay.
And it's basically a process that you can take new hires through, where it's asking like four simple and basic questions every single week. Now, ultimately, like what you're looking for isn't necessarily like, do they need to be the absolute expert at what we do, our products, our story, and everything in the first, week? No, not at all. But what this is going to do is going to give you a framework for how you can essentially train them. And then what you do is you test them for the first 4 to 6 weeks, right?
Okay.
And so every week you should be seeing improvement. So a couple quick questions are, I got to remember them off the top of my head. Like number one, like how would you describe us? How would you describe our company to a friend you met at a barbecue, right? Very simple, very straightforward.
Okay.
But what you want to do is like, can they express it? Can they actually put together like
Yeah.
what you do? Number two, like what's common objections that people will have to our service or our product? What can they list off? And so by week one, they shouldn't have much of it, but that's also going to give you the ability to say, all right, you need to practice on, more product knowledge. You need to practice on understanding our story a little bit better. And so that's the second exercise. And then last but not least
Love
is
it.
building a really effective like sales playbook. That takes a little bit more time. That takes a little bit more effort. We build sales playbooks for companies all day. That's like one of our core competencies. But essentially what it breaks down to is just product knowledge, company knowledge, role knowledge, right? It's like kind of those three factors, right? And so just dictating that or putting that down in a written like place, right? A source of truth for your salespeople is going to be really, really helpful.
I love it. I love the second part, especially because you're talking about you, your employees won't know any of it if you don't have core values, mission statement, vision statement. And so this is a way to test them on knowing what you stand for, why you stand for it, where you're going, and how you accomplish things within your company. And so when you
Yeah.
clearly lay that out for them and everyone knows it and it's discussed, then everyone can work harder to accomplish the goal because they know what the actual goal is. You may think your employees know what the goal is, but if the goal is just the shower, you're missing it, because it's not about the shower. It's about building the
Yeah.
community, or what is it that you actually want your company to accomplish, and they need to know that so they can work towards building that and feel as a part of something, as opposed to just showing up and they're doing a shower or a floor or whatever it is that they're doing. So I love that
So
second
true.
part.
So true.
Awesome. We will get the PDF from you. We will put the link to it in the show notes, so that's where you'll be able to find that when this episode comes out, folks. And is there anything that we didn't hit on, Mark, that we need to?
Oh man, so much.
There's tons, I know,
This
but
could be a BDC mini series, right?
for sure.
Because I love talking about this and I love talking about this topic with you as well and to this industry. But no, what I would just challenge the listeners and what I would leave them with is, sales doesn't have to be overcomplicated. And unfortunately, you get really good at this role, right? And you get really good in it, and then you just kind of can fall into these continuous habits. But if you really want to grow, just a really easy takeaway that your listeners can start implementing is just start mapping out like what should that sales conversation look like. There is a roadmap to follow. It's
Hmm.
not as difficult as what it seems. And just by following a little bit of those standards, they're going to radically see their conversion rates increase, which means more projects, more sales, helping more people, and ultimately building a bigger and better business.
I love it. You got to do the work, folks. You got to map it out. You want to grow? You want to grow your company, you got to map out a lot of stuff, but starting with sales, you can't grow if there's not enough revenue coming in for you to hire more people. So I think that's a great place to start. That is awesome. Mark, if anybody wants to find you and work with SalesKit, where do they find you? How do they find you? How do they get you involved in helping them change their sales processes? Now, granted, you are specialized in multifamily. However, this stuff is easily translatable to the entire industry and convertible. So Where do we find you?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, number one, we'll have some announcements regarding brick and mortar retail locations here upcoming. We've got some really exciting, really cool stuff on tap for that I can't wait to talk to people with. But really, where they can find me is email is going to be the best method. But let me give you my website first, and that's getsaleskit.com. And then I'll make sure that we get that link to you where they can get all the
Okay.
bonus stuff. And then, yeah, that's as simple as we'll track you down from there.
Okay. And your email?
Mark, M-A-R-K, at getsaleskit.com.
Perfect. Love it. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us this week. I appreciate you tuning in, Mark. I appreciate your insights into sales and how to put together a system that will, again, help you figure out what the actual problem is, present the solution, and close more deals, because that's what we all need. You said it perfectly. If you don't have sales, then you just got a truck and some tools and you're not doing anything. There's no business. So you got to figure out that sales part for sure. Folks, one last word. It's from Tice. We are so close to surfaces. So close. If you were listening to this episode, it's like next week, I think, or like a week and a half. It is almost happening. So
Wow.
you had better get on it. Go book that plane ticket, book that hotel. You're going to go to the Surfaces website, and you are going to use promo code Kyle, Kyle. Don't screw it up. You can't. It's 4 letters. It's my name. Just put it in. You get that free exhibition pass. All right. So January 24th through 26th in Las Vegas. That's where you want to be. You're going to come and hang out, because whether you're an installer, retailer, distributor, or serve in another capacity within our industry, attending Tice is a solid resource to expand your knowledge and networking base. Look, the products are cool. I go for the people. I love seeing
Yeah.
all my friends. I love meeting new people. I love networking. I always get to line up more podcasts while I'm there. If you're not networking, you're doing the show wrong. And then getting the products is like second to me. I know most people are about the products, and then the other part is second. You got to reverse this. Even if you're going to learn about the new products from your vendors, you got to network with them, get to know them, ask them this question, right? If you're going to ask clients what was good or bad about the situation with like previous contractors, you need to be going to your vendors and saying, how can you help me grow my business? Let them pitch you on what makes them a good fit for your business. Tell them what your goals are, what your mission is, and let them tell you how they can help you solve your problems and reach your goals. And it'll change how you interact with vendors for sure. So get out there, do that. You're going to learn about the newest and industry leading products coming to market. Stay up to date with International Surfaces Event online on Facebook at the International Surfaces Event page, or go online to intlsurfaceevent.com. I look forward to seeing you all there. Don't forget to sign up for my talk when you're registering for Wednesday morning. I will be going over organizational charts, why they're important, and how to have a different look at it to actually help you communicate more effectively within your company. I'm going to be doing a podcast, so look for that. And there's this talk on the Surfaces Expo stage. So, I'm in multiple places. Come find me. Love to chat. Love to get to know you. Don't forget about our mastermind groups. If you seriously want to grow your business, get into one of our business therapy mastermind groups, and let's talk about your struggles. Let's set goals. Let's be held accountable by other members to achieve them. And so if you're interested in learning more, you can go to flooracademypod.com/mastermind to check out the video I've put up there, and then go to the bottom, click the schedule a call, and it'll schedule a call with me. We'll sit down, we'll chat, we'll get to know each other, and we'll see what we can do to help grow your business. That's going to do it for us this week, folks. Mark, thanks again for joining us and providing value to the audience to help them build their businesses more successfully. And we will catch you all next week.